We were discussing this a bit yesterday, the relatively muted response of the left to Trump's resounding victory, along with that of Senate and House Republicans, certainly as compared to 2016.
Oh, my God, it's just eerily quiet. Like back then, everybody was wearing the hats, the pea hats, and complaining and nothing.
It's not nothing, but it's different. Dan Henninger, writing in the Wall Street Journal about this, has a thoughtful take. After setting up the fact that over the last 50 to 60 years, we became one big college campus in this country, certainly culminating during the Biden years. He writes, as with the 10-year aging of the anti-Trump protesters, the simple answer is that the traditional Democrat mindset aged out. It's been replaced in Congress, state houses, and city councils by politicians who internalize the groupthink nonsense they learned about race and class at the universities. That's why they all sound the same. It's remarkable that by the end of this election, Donald Trump actually ran successfully on restoring common sense. I guess it's a powerful idea again. How the Democratic Party reverse engineers all of this is easier said than done. But say this, if 19-year-olds would rather react to the 2024 election with cookies and cocoa than lying in front of the Lincoln Tunnel, it looks like progress to me. Yes. Yes.
Good.
Yeah, the, comfort animals and the jigsaw puzzles and coloring books and cocoa on college campuses, that's still a part of it, but it is definitely not the same as a decade ago, and part of it is just aged out. And this mentality may be losing its grip even among some that otherwise hew to it at present, and you see this in terms of the drop-off that we've talked about over the last several days, drop-off in viewership on all these MSNBC shows, drop-off in subscribers to leftist podcasts that podcaster David Pakman was complaining about. Very interesting cultural phenomenon. In the short term, it could change. For more on this and related topics, pleased to be joined again by Liel Leibovitz. He's the editor-at-large for Tablet and host of the new podcast. Speaking of podcasts, Rootless is the name of his. Liel, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
A pleasure as always. It's morning in America.
Yes. Well, MORN for us and MOURN for them. So what do you attribute to the muted response compared to 2016 and just the general horror that they display at the prospect of a Trump presidency and display throughout this campaign, but then he wins a resounding victory and it's, pretty quiet?
Look, first of all, I think it is kind of a normal human response when an overwhelming majority of Americans tell you that they dislike you and every single thing you believe. Even the most kind of, dogged lunatic would pause and listen. But I'm not that optimistic, to be honest, that the Democratic Party would actually kind of have some soul-searching and mend its ways. There's a great book, I believe from the 60s, called When Prophecy Fails, in which scientists talk to a doomsday cult that believed that the world would end at a certain date. And they went to them the next morning when the world clearly didn't end and said, hey, what do you believe now? And they said, oh, no, we believe even more that we were correct. I think what we're seeing in the Democratic Party now as a muted response is just preparation to double down on the same terrible, bad, loathsome ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's certainly indicated from our governor here in Illinois and another governor, probably with presidential aspirations, Colorado Governor Jared Polis. They're leading what they're calling the Governor's Safeguarding Democracy Initiative in response to Trump's reelection. Pritzker saying what we're doing is pushing back against increasing threats of autocracy and fortifying the institutions of democracy that our country and our states depend on.
Right.
Basically without providing any specifics, because all of these threats are to be named later when Trump actually takes office and they can identify something.
It's the same playbook. Here in New York, and I think in California too, they call it Trump-proofing the state, which means tripling down on all the policies, most Americans just rejected. But the thing that really concerns me more, I write for a major Jewish publication. First Trump administration, we had all these spurious, ridiculous, preposterous accusations that a host of people in the Trump universe were Nazis. Famously, National Security Advisor Seb Gorka was literally accused of being, kind of an actual Nazi. Now we're seeing the exact same rhetoric applied to the Attorney General-elect Matt Gaetz. It really is like they have learned absolutely nothing. There's one playbook, and that's the one they're running with.
What do you think of Mike Huckabee as ambassador to Israel?
I honestly, I don't know why we deserve so many wonders. It's too good. It's just freaking fantastic. What a terrific, godly man who understands the region better than most, has deep commitments, and understands that the skirmishes that Israel is fighting right now are not its alone, but rather just the Eastern Front in a war, the ultimate kind of target of which is, the American homeland.
Well, and now think about this from a team perspective too, with Rubio and Stefanik and Huckabee and Tulsi Gabbard. What does that portend, do you think, not just for Israel but for the region?
Peace, prosperity, security, and normalcy. Look, it is almost impossible to fathom how entirely bonkers, to use a very technical term, American foreign policy has been over the last, decade and a half or two. Think of all the things we've been told are true. Oh, if you move the embassy to Jerusalem, there'll be mass riots, millions will die. And then Trump goes ahead and does it, and it doesn't happen. Oh, you can't have peace between Israel and the Arabs unless you go through the Palestinians first. And then, Jared Kushner comes up with the Abraham Accords, and Trump wills it into power. And now we have a brand new Middle East. Cracking down on Iran, bringing Israelis and Arabs closer, and curbing Palestinian, via anti-Semitism and terrorism. Those are the three things we're going to see a lot more of, and it's going to make for a more secure region and a more secure world.
You wrote a good piece in the New York Post about the Jewish vote in this recently passed election. Hasn't gotten as much attention as Trump's improvement with black and Latino voters, but the Jewish vote as part of the realignment of the working class in the direction of the GOP. Give us the details.
Well, look, in a weird way, I actually think that the loss of so many Jewish voters should freak Democrats out way, way more than probably any other indicator this electoral cycle. It's still hard to kind of say exactly what the precise numbers are, but I think it's safe to assume that we're looking at something like 40, even 45 support for Trump, which is completely historically unprecedented. The reason this matters is because when you lose the kind of most astute, hardcore Democrat loyal group, you don't just lose the Jews, but traditionally the Jews, as you said, have been deeply sort of tethered to voting with the interests of the working class. So when you lose the Jews, you also lost, Americans, which means not just that you're kind of losing one group block that voted according to other standards or anything like that, but rather that your message is completely and utterly off base. The Democrats have become the party of the wealthy, disconnected, bloated, bloviating elite.
And the response to, I just think, where some of the issues that, at least my experience in electoral politics in places like Chicago and Illinois, the issues that were particularly motivating, like they are to the left in general, like abortion, I think they're declining in importance, and I don't think the hysteria is working like it used to under Roe, when the reality is that you have very different legal regimes in as you go state by state, and all of the sort of hands-made tale predictions just aren't coming true. They're still, as you say, or as you said earlier, they're still in the death throes of this. They're still doing the same thing with, the increase in people requesting abortifacients and hormone treatments, that they're stockpiling them like the same people stockpiled toilet paper during COVID. That's still going on, but it seems like it just doesn't have the cachet, even on the left, that it used to have.
Like a wise Republican said, you could lie to some people sometime, but not all the people all the time. It pains me physically to say something nice about the New York Times, but one of the most astonishing things I have seen in the last week is the New York Times ran a series of interviews with voters. Those are Democrat voters who switched and voted for Trump. And one of them, very, very prominently placed in the article, was a young woman who said, look, I live in a state where abortion laws are restrictive. I had a pregnancy. I had a medical emergency. I was freaking out because everything I have been told led me to believe that I will now, bleed to death on some gurney because I can't receive, life-saving medical procedures. And none of that happened. And when I woke up in the morning, I was like, oh, they have been lying to me. I think a lot of people are having that exact same response.
Liel Leibovitz is the editor-at-large for Tablet, and he is the host of the podcast Rootless. Liel, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Signature Bank is Chicago's fastest-growing independently owned business bank. It's a bank where relationships still matter. Signature Bank knows your name and your story. I'm Dan Proft, and I know this because Signature Bank is my business bank.
I'm Jim Durkin, founding partner of the Martech Group, a global market research firm based in Chicago since 1985 and a longtime customer of Signature Bank. When our business moved to our current Loop location, I recall seeing Mick O'Rourke and his two business partners, Brian Duncan and Kevin Bastuga, laying the foundation for Signature Bank. When Signature opened its doors in 2006, I was proud to move our accounts there and become a shareholder. Being in the consulting business, the Martech Group has a keen understanding of the value of